All right, thank you so much for joining us here today, everybody. My name's Jeff, and I'm going to be taking you through the Beating AdWords Bidding webinar. I'm also joined here by Tessa, Bobby, and Rebecca. They'll also be helping guide us through the webinar today. And if you'd like, you can join in on the social discussion of the webinar using your Twitter handle there. Just use the hashtag WordStream, and you can just chat about the content today. Get in touch with, maybe Larry Kim. He might actually chime in. But either way, if you'd like to follow along, just use that hashtag, and we'll follow you there. Now, real quick, WordStream recently released our HTML dashboard. This is a really cool release for us. We're pretty proud of it. And if you haven't actually made the switch to the new PPC dashboard, I'll definitely recommend that you do so now. If you actually log into your WordStream account and you haven't transitioned, you'll see a little option underneath the 20-minute workweek menu option there that says try the brand new 20-minute workweek. So click on that, and we'll actually bring you over to the HTML version. And you'll actually be able to switch between the two for now. Towards the end of the year, it'll be a hard transition where everybody will be using the HTML dashboard, but we're very proud of it. We think it works a lot better. There's some really good kind of guiding text alongside the alerts there, and overall it just runs a little bit faster too. So definitely take a look into the new dashboard and let us know what you think by just contacting the support line or sending a note into your support email. That will go right back to your customer success rep, and any recommendations or feedback you have, just know that it does go direct to the product team. So definitely take some time with that new dashboard if you can. And again, our presenters for today. So my name's Jeff. I'm a senior customer success rep here at WordStream. Tessa, Bobby, and Rebecca are all customer success specialists, so you might actually be working with them on your accounts or be hearing from them soon. So today's webinar is really going to focus on bidding in general. What we're going to do is kind of go over some basic stuff from the beginning. In particular, the first couple sections will just focus on the types of bidding that you can use, why you should use them, what certain situations you'll be using them in. And then we'll actually go into some more detailed discussions on when to bid up and when to bid down. We'll talk a little bit more about mobile bid adjustments and ad scheduling as it relates to bidding. And then we're actually going to get into a couple of advanced bidding concepts, which Bobby will wrap up with. But to start out, let's just walk through a couple of the available bid strategies for now. So we're just going to talk about what those actual bid strategies are, who typically uses them, and really just how to kind of think about them in general. So overall, as you should know, bid strategies really need to be tailored towards your campaign type, the targeting settings that you're using under the campaign, and your overall performance goals. So think about things like if you're a lead generation business, you're probably looking at a different type of bidding strategy. If you're e-commerce, obviously there's a different type of bidding strategy that you can use in that scenario. And we'll be talking through ways to kind of identify those top metrics and the ways to think about the bidding that you should be using in your account. But for now, let's just review the 4 strategies. So we'll be looking at manual CPC, automatic CPC, CPM, and CPA bidding. All right, so let's talk about manual and auto CPC bidding. So I'll be totally upfront with you. Automatic CPC bidding is kind of a last resort option here. A lot of advertisers will use the automatic CPC bidding option if they're just simply not familiar with AdWords bidding. They're not confident in running bids themselves and kind of managing it on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. If I get a client here at WordStream, I'm typically looking to move them from automatic bidding over to manual at some point in time. It's not something that you should be doing right away. So if you are using this setting, don't think that based on what I'm telling you today, you just need to switch to manual immediately. It needs to be a slow transition. You need to make sure that you're feeling comfortable with how to manually bid to actually do that transition. But there are some cases where automatic CPC bidding can be helpful. It does allow you to hit your budget fairly consistently. So what I mean by hitting your budget is actually making sure that you are spending the full budget within the day that you've allocated to the account. A lot of advertisers look at that as a way to just make sure they're getting the traffic that they're paying for. So automatic CPC bidding obviously gives Google the control over your bids. So Google's going to try as hard as it can to actually spend towards that budget. If you don't have the keywords in there and there's just not a lot of traffic, you might not hit that budget. But either way, this is an option that can get you pretty close. Also, it's a good strategy to use, again, if you're not comfortable with manual CPC bidding just yet. If you're a new advertiser, automatic CPC bidding can be helpful for just kind of understanding how bidding works and learning a little bit about it before you go over to manual. Overall, it also impacts the amount of time you manage the account. bidding is a huge part of account management, and if you're setting this to automatic, you'll take a chunk of time out of your management of the account. And a typical goal that's used with automatic bidding is just to increase traffic in general. Now, manual CPC bidding is actually the default strategy in AdWords. It's the one that we typically recommend using across the board in most cases. This type of bidding really does give you the tightest control over your budget and your individual keywords. Obviously, you can make all sorts of adjustments with your bidding when you're using the manual option. You can set individual bids to certain keywords and then automated rules to other keywords. Overall, it's just going to give you the best opportunity to monitor your account closely and make quick time decisions to get the best performance out of your keywords on a day-to-day basis. So let's talk a little bit about CPM bidding. It's kind of one of those bidding types that is a little bit overlooked and a little bit unknown. It stands for cost per meal, which is just a fancy way of saying cost per 1,000 impressions. This is typically used when you're running an awareness campaign or a branding campaign, and you're really focused on the visibility of your ad. So just trying to make sure that your ad is showing up as often as possible in the places that you'd like it to actually show. CPM bidding is typically used for remarketing campaigns and other display network campaigns. And again, what this is you're actually paying for a certain number of impressions. So when you start to think about that, you have to also understand that Google is, being given quite a bit of control over your account when you're using this setting, especially when you're looking at the display network. Because the display network runs on a series of network placements, Google might actually look for the placements that are more likely to give you higher numbers of impressions so that they can actually impact more costs on your account. Google will look at that and say, okay, let's give you more impressions. Hopefully you're going to see good volume here. You're using CPM bidding, so I'm just worried about getting your ad in as many websites as I can. So it might not be the most efficient way to run something like a lead generation campaign through the display network because you're probably a little bit more focused on getting clicks there. So definitely keep that in mind when you're using CPM bidding, but it can be a good way for just guaranteeing that you're getting a certain number of views on your actual ads. The big thing to keep in mind here, though, if you're doing this type of bidding, your ad copy shouldn't be trying to get somebody to take an action. You should actually try and get your message in the ad itself. So maybe you're just promoting a conference that's coming up. Perhaps you just want to promote a new message and you're a nonprofit and you're just looking to bring kind of a new campaign out there, an awareness campaign. That's something to think about with CPM bidding. Last but not least is CPA bidding. It's a little bit more of an advanced option simply because it requires your account to be a little bit more mature and optimized to start using it effectively. CPA bidding is only able to actually be turned on after you have conversion tracking enabled. You've tracked at least 15 conversions in the past 30 days, and you do have consistent conversions for a few days in that stretch. And you need to make sure that you're using search or display targeting. CPA bidding is really, really effective for e-commerce accounts and high-volume campaigns that have kind of a well-defined conversion type or that are direct response. Again, you're essentially saying that you want to bid towards a certain cost per acquisition. So it's a great way of making sure that you're never actually paying more than you're able to spend on a conversion. So it's really good for just tying your campaign back into a high ROI focus. If you have just a very tight margin on certain products, perhaps you would want to use CPA bidding in those campaigns that are using those or that are promoting those particular products. But either way, I would definitely recommend, asking your customer success rep if this is a bidding option that you could consider, especially if your account has been running for a little while. It's definitely a good one to consider if you are very focused on that ROI. All right, so this next section is going to talk a little bit about identifying the metrics that are going to be helpful for adjusting your bids. So these are kind of the signs and signals that you're looking for in your account to identify whether you need to actually bid up or bid down in order to get the performance that you're looking for in AdWords. We've highlighted a couple of metrics here: cost per click, average position, cost per acquisition, and click-through rate. Let's just go from the top. Obviously, cost per click is just showing you how much you're actually paying on average per click. If you're very, very focused on just getting volume but you don't want to do it at a high cost, your average CPC is a great number to keep in mind, and you can set some thresholds there for something you might not want to go beyond. You can actually set those types of limits in your account. Average position is really good for looking into. For example, lead generation campaigns typically do very well if they're in the 1 through 3 spots on the search result pages, but if they're in the 4 or 5 or even lower, a lot of credibility is lost, especially in the searcher's opinion. So I've worked with a number of advertisers that will tell me, Jeff, the only thing I'm looking at is my average position and I'm bidding towards position. It's a very common strategy. There's a lot of different metrics that should also help inform that bidding, and we'll kind of get into how these mix and match. But average position can be a huge one, especially when you're a lead generation company. Most clicks tend to be a lot more qualified when they come in those 1 through 3 spots. So definitely a metric that can be good for monitoring to adjust your bids. Cost per conversion, cost per acquisition obviously is just a huge important metric for any advertiser that's looking to drive leads or sales through AdWords. When you're looking at this number and you see that it is extremely high, you're probably going to look to try and detract some of your costs either by reducing budget or reducing bids on keywords that just don't perform well. So look at that CPA, and that's kind of a big overall indicator as to whether or not you're getting good return on investment on the current keywords you're bidding on. Click-through rate obviously is all about engagement. So if you're worried about, let's say, awareness overall in your campaign, you're probably not looking at click-through rate too much. But if you are focused on generating clicks, getting leads and sales, click-through rate is going to be huge. And obviously, click-through rate kind of ties into that average position. So if you're looking to boost your click-through rate, you can look into the average position as well and see that if you're outside of those top 3 positions, you might want to bid up a little bit higher to get back. So overall, why are these metrics important? Each metric is going to play a really unique role in determining your bids and strategy. You need to really try and identify maybe 1 or 2 of these metrics that are the most important to you to pursue and to kind of optimize around. But realize that all of these metrics are connected and do feed off of each other. So there's a relationship between your average position and your click-through rate, and perhaps your cost per acquisition as well, because when you start getting more clicks and more leads in those top positions, you might actually see that that increased volume, even though you're paying more for it, translates to more conversions and drops your CPA. So there's a lot of kind of interrelation and interplay between these statistics, and just know that kind of trying to adjust one metric is going to affect the rest. But definitely look to try and identify that top metric for you, whether that's CPA, average position, click-through rate, or anything along those lines. So finding your most important metric. So how do you actually go about identifying what that metric is? Again, it's impossible to set a bid that's going to optimize all metrics that you think are important. So you need to actually just focus on 1 or 2 of these that are going to be your focus in a particular campaign. Some campaigns may have different goals behind them, but you should always be looking at things like CPA, average positioning, and click-through rate and cost per click. Base your strategy around these important metrics. So if you're CPA focused, you're probably looking at trying to get to your account to a point where you can use CPA bidding. If you're really focused on awareness, you're probably looking to get your account to where you can actually use CPM bidding and do that effectively. If you're looking at average position, manual bidding is going to be your best option there because you're going to be able to make quick adjustments to get you into better positions over time. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Becca, and she's going to take you through the ideas behind when to bid up and when to bid down and some of the strategies and just best practices you'll use then.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. So I'll start with when to bid up. So knowing when to increase your bids is based largely upon your most important metric. In this way, it's very subjective and there's no clear-cut rule. But we'll go through some examples of when you should bid up. So for instance, say you have a low click-through rate and an average position and you're looking to get more conversions. You might want to raise your bid to increase your ad rank and get a better position, maybe in that position 1 through 3, to just help bring in more clicks and more conversions. You might be interested in increasing traffic to your site. So raising your bid would be beneficial in that a higher CPC will make you more competitive when trying to get to either the top of the page or the first page. So that will get you more clicks in general. If you have a low impression share, we'll go through this in a couple slides, but you might want to raise your bid to be eligible for a larger portion of the auctions, thus raising your impression share. So just in general, use your AdWords knowledge when you're raising your bid to know how changing certain metrics will change other metrics as well and target your most important metric. When to bid down. Bidding down is usually done to reduce costs and maximize budget towards better performing keywords. So again, focus on what your most important metric is and try and gear your bidding down strategies towards that. So for instance, say you're focusing on lowering your cost per acquisition, and you have a high position and a high impression share, lowering your bid could actually save you money while still allowing you to stay in a relatively high position. So back to impression share. Impression share would be a good metric to look at when you're seeing if you want to raise your bid or decrease your bid. So impression share is the number of impressions that you're getting divided by the estimated eligible impressions. And this eligibility is based upon your targeting, bids, and your quality score. So the impression share just kind of shows you what percentage of the available market you're showing your ads to, but it also shows you what percentage of the market you are not showing your ads to based on your rank or your budget. So for example, if we look to the right of the screen, we see a client's account, and we see that they have a very high search impression share loss due to rank. So this means that around 80% of the time they're not showing their ads when they're eligible to because their ad rank is low. So this makes their search impression share pretty low as well. So here it might be good for this client to raise their bids, since ad rank is a function of quality score and CPC. So that way they'll raise their ad rank and increase their impression share. And so if you have a high impression share, and say you're, again, in like a top position, you might want to lower your bid just to save, to reduce some costs, but you'll still be in like a relatively high position again. Yeah, so that's impression share. So next is some strategies about when to bid down and how to bid down. When you're bidding down, it's great to use a percentage increment, so not to bid down like too much. So we usually suggest a standard down bid of 10%, but if you want to be more aggressive, you could go towards something like 20%, and if you want to be more conservative, somewhere around 5% would be good. And this just allows you to track how these bid changes are affecting your account, just so you don't make any too drastic changes right away. And next I'll go through some bidding scenarios where you might want to lower your bid. So say an advertiser has a high number of impressions, a low click-through rate, and a high CPC. This advertiser is not getting that much traffic to their site, but they're paying a lot for like little traffic. So you might want to lower your bid since this ad is not performing as well, and you'll want to reduce some costs there. The next example is if you have a low quality score, a high click-through rate, and a high position, lowering your bids would actually allow you to avoid paying a premium for that top spot. So since ad rank is quality score times CPC, you're actually making up for your low quality score by paying a lot. So you would want to lower your bids here. And the last one is if you have a high average position, a high CPC, and a low conversion rate, and say you're focused on these conversions, you might want to lower your bid because this keyword is definitely not performing well for you if you're looking at conversions, so you might just want to reduce the cost here. So there are some other strategies you can use about when to bid up and down, and these are automated strategies in AdWords. So they're all under flexible bid strategies, and these just allow you to automatically set bids to optimize for certain metrics across or within your campaigns. So for instance, the maximize clicks will automatically set bids to get you a large amount of clicks within your budget. Target search page location will automatically set your bids to adjust for which position on the page you want to be in. A target CPA will automatically adjust your bids to get to your desired cost per acquisition. Enhanced CPC will automatically set your bids based on each click's likelihood to result in a conversion. And the target return on ad spend will, like the target CPA, will automatically adjust your bids to get you your desired return on ad spend. So since these are automated bidding strategies, it's always good just to keep your eye on them and focus on what your most important metrics are, for instance, like conversions and ROI. So these are just some other strategies that you might want to think about implementing into your account. So that's it for when to bid up and down, and I'll throw it over to Tessa.
So thanks, Rebecca. Today I'm going to be going over some additional ways to target users by using mobile bid adjustments in ad scheduling. So I guess the first question we should answer are, what are bid adjustments? bid adjustments are a percentage change to a bid and allow for an increase or decrease for better control of where your ads are shown. So as a result of everyone constantly being connected to their cell phones, this presents advertisers with an opportunity to reach potential customers anytime and any place through their mobile devices. So if you're already targeting a mobile device or would like to set one up, there are a few things you should be aware of when doing so. The first thing to pay attention to is to monitor mobile closely. Mobile tends to have a higher cost per click than desktop. You should also adjust as needed. In order to optimize these mobile bid adjustments, you'll need to adjust according to how the ad is performing. So one metric to consider is to identify the ratio of mobile versus your desktop conversion value. Advertisers also tend to find a lot of misclicks as well as a limited ability to create effective offers. So typically they find that mobile doesn't convert well with display and remarketing campaigns. And lastly, you should always test leaving mobile on before turning it off completely. It's also important to consider the season as well as your business operations to see if this may be affecting it. This is something you should not only test on mobile bid, but on all your campaigns. So on the next slide, you'll see where you can find these mobile bid adjustments as well as a variety of other metrics. So if you look to the left of the screen, you can see all the devices you're targeting as well as I stated before, all metrics. So it's important to note that your mobile bid adjustments can range from negative 100%, which essentially shuts off mobile bids, up to positive 300%, which significantly lowers your bid on desktop. You can see in this example, mobile bids are currently set at negative 100, which has shut them off. You should really base these percentages off of how mobile optimized your website is. So another bidding feature you may want to consider using to optimize your campaign is ad scheduling. So ad scheduling allows advertisers to schedule their campaigns for certain times of the day or week, as well as increase or decrease these bids accordingly. So as you can see towards the right of the screen, highlighted in the red box, is the average position. So here you can see that towards the middle of the day, the average position, as well as the metrics towards the left of it, such as clicks, impressions, increase significantly. So this indicates that majority of your business is happening around these areas, which may encourage you to increase your bid during these hours of heightened traffic. So it's really important to consider not only these trends, but also your business before setting up an ad schedule. So for example, the data on this grid may represent a doctor's office whose hours are 9 to 6 during the week. Whereas if we were to track a restaurant's data, we may see average position and clicks increase during the weekends and at nights. So if you're still on the fence about setting up ad scheduling, we've also set up this slide so you can kind of dive into AdWords and analyze the data by what days and times of the day are most profitable for your ad. So when you're in AdWords, if you go to the Dimensions tab and then navigate to the View drop-down button, we can scroll to the Time option. So this Time option allows you to view data ranging from day of the week all the way down to hour of the day. So when you're creating an ad schedule, it's important to make sure you're basing this schedule off of a significant amount of data and proven trends, which you can see or you can use by using the metrics towards the right of this. So I would suggest taking the time to view all the time options and study the metrics presented here to make sure you're not basing an ad schedule off of random pattern. So once you've determined an ad schedule that works best for your campaign, you can move to the Settings tab and then create this schedule. So here you can see at the bottom you'll be able to select the days and times that you wish your ad to appear. And then in this last slide, you can see what days this client has chosen to increase their budget as well as how much. So going back to our doctor's office example earlier, this may be a good schedule for the doctor's office to use since they're open Monday through Sunday between the hours of 9 to 6. And as you can see, they've opted to increase their bid by 15%. So in summary, both mobile bid adjustments as well as ad scheduling are great strategies to use to increase traffic and utilize your budget efficiently. Although if you do choose to do so, it's imperative to study and test any trends found. So now I'm going to pass it off to Bobby, who's going to be covering stacked bidding.
Thank you, Tessa. And all right, everyone, that does take us to our last topic for today, which is an advanced bidding strategy known as stacked bidding. This is a great topic to end with because this is a strategy that you can hopefully take right away from the webinar today and apply directly into your accounts. So our goal here is to cover what stacked bidding actually is, when it's ideal to use it, and why it works. So stacked bidding is an advanced bidding technique that allows advertisers to test the performance of different match types on the same keyword simultaneously. The time to use this is when you're adding a new keyword into your account, because right off the bat you might be unsure of which match type is going to be most effective. On the one hand, you might lean towards something more restrictive, such as phrase or exact. That's going to pull in more relevant queries for you, which leads to a higher click-through rate, more qualified clicks. And on those more restrictive match types, you're going to have less competition. So in general, your average cost per click is going to be lower. The more restrictive match types like phrase and exact, though, are going to bring in less volume. And so that might push you towards trying something a little less restrictive, like broad or modified broad. That's going to bring more traffic. You'll see a wider variety of search queries triggering your ads. And that in turn leads to more data and the discovery of new keywords. With the less restrictive match types, though, of course, you're going to have more competition, which translates to a higher average cost per click. So wouldn't it be nice if there was a way right off the bat to test multiple match types on a new keyword while ensuring that the version of the keyword with the lowest possible cost per click would be served whenever possible? And that's where stacking the bids comes in. What we're actually going to do is stack the bids for each version of the new keyword to place an incrementally higher bid on the versions of the keywords with the more restrictive match types. That'll give Google a reason to always serve the most restrictive match type that's eligible in the event that a search query matches multiple versions of your new keyword. The more restrictive match type is going to mean less competition, usually a better click-through rate and quality score, and all of that is going to lead to a lower average cost per click. So even though we're actually bidding incrementally more on the more restrictive match types, our actual cost per click will be lower on average when those match types are served. So on the next slide here, we'll see how this actually looks in AdWords, just so we can kind of visualize this. The account we're looking at here is an archery retailer, and the keyword that they're bidding on is toxic broadheads, which is a type of arrowhead. So as you can see, they've set up to simultaneously run this keyword 3 times on 3 different match types: exact, phrase, and modified broad. And then starting with modified broad there at the bottom, we started with the lowest max cost per click bid at $1.50, and then bid incrementally higher on the more restrictive match types. And the data that was generated by running this test was definitely pretty interesting, because you actually see that the most traffic is coming through on that exact match of the keyword. And even though we're bidding the most on that version of the keyword, the average cost per click there is actually the lowest. So it's definitely the most effective and most cost-effective version of the keyword there. Looking at the modified broad version, it's got a higher average cost per click and isn't bringing in much traffic, hasn't converted at all. So in this case, we'd probably consider turning that one off and saving a little bit of cost there. The phrase match version of the keyword, even though it has the highest average cost per click, still got pretty good traffic and actually converted at the highest rate and with the best cost per conversion. So in this case, by running this test, we can see that the 2 more restrictive match types, exact and phrase, are the most effective for this keyword, and we can make a decision based on that information. So that's how this looks in AdWords. And just a few basic guidelines to keep in mind when you're using this strategy. You're only going to want to use 3 match types total, and you'll always use phrase and exact. So those 2 more restrictive ones are pretty distinct and generally have the lower average cost per click. You want to use both of those along with one of the less restrictive match types being broad or modified broad. You'll set up your bids in 5% increments for each more restrictive match type. Some people do go with more like a 10 or 15% increase. Somewhere in that 5 to 15% ballpark range is recommendable for your stacked bid increments. You will want to keep all the versions of your new keyword in the same ad group when you're stacking the bids. That way they're going to be triggering the same ads, and the test that you run with all 3 of those match types will be relevant, and you can make an informed decision based on the information that you see. And then finally, you want to make sure to set and run that test for at least 30 days. That'll give you enough time for all those keywords to run, accrue some data, and help you make an educated decision on which version of the match or which version of the keyword will be best for your account. So that's stacked bidding in a nutshell, and now I'll pass it back over to Jeff to wrap things up and get into some of your questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Bobby, for wrapping up for us today. And what we're going to do here is we definitely have some extra time left, and we've gotten a lot of really good questions. So what I'm going to do is just kind of try and moderate some of the questions here. If you have not asked a question yet, you can certainly do so by just typing in a question there into the question box in your GoToMeeting interface. So let's just kind of start off from the top. We have a really good question here from Vince asking about automatic CPC bidding or enhanced CPC bidding. So the question is automatic CPC bidding the same as enhanced cost per click bidding? The answer is no. Enhanced cost per click bidding is actually a setting that you can apply to your manual bidding strategy. that allows Google to raise your bid incrementally if it thinks that it's going to generate a click. And that incremental bid is usually about a 10% threshold. So it's kind of it's like an automated bid setting that you can turn on for manual bidding that allows Google to just take a little bit of an extra stretch to get you the click that it thinks is likely to convert. Next question here. How do I lower my bid without losing significant positioning? That's from Patrick. Great question. In one of our slides, we were kind of talking about the ways that you think about bidding down in the percentage increments that you're going to use. Use -5% as a very conservative bid down estimate. So when you're looking to just try and kind of slowly pare your bid down to save cost, use that percentage number because you're not going to be impacting, you know, a $2 bid and a 5% reduction is going to be very, very small. But that is incremental enough for you to start pulling back your costs a little bit to see if that's going to hurt your position in any way. So just do it gradually as you actually look to drop your bids there. We had a question from Ross, who actually left the webinar, so he's not going to hear the answer. But great question here. Are you showing screen captures from WordStream? If so, can you identify where they're taken from? So let me clarify a couple of things. The impression share metric that we showed, which I think is one of the big topics in here, is actually only available in AdWords right now. It's restricted through the API, so we can't get it in WordStream at the moment. To actually get your impression share metric, you need to navigate to AdWords, and then it's an extra column that you can add in your AdWords view. If you click on that columns drop-down, there's a section called Competitive Metrics. In that section, you'll see the option to add in the search impression share, and you'll see a number of other impression share metrics that you can add in, like lost impression share due to ad rank or lost impression share due to budget, as Rebecca mentioned earlier. So just keep that in mind. Impression share is available within the AdWords interface, and currently you can't see it in WordStream. Typically, I'll have kind of both open, and I'll be looking at my account when I'm doing bidding work to have that impression share available for me. Another good one is just related to the ad schedule. Right now, we don't have access in WordStream to set an ad schedule, so that's another kind of advanced setting that you'll want to go into actually AdWords to go and set. Tessa's slides earlier gave you great screenshots of where to actually find that in the AdWords interface, so definitely reference those, and you'll be able to see how to set that up. Mobile bid adjustments can be adjusted within WordStream. You can set those at the campaign level or the ad group level. So if you do click on a campaign in the WordStream menu and then go to the settings tab, you'll see that option there near the bottom. And then if you go to an ad group and click on settings there, you'll see the option to add a mobile bid adjustment to the ad group level as well. Another question here, Raphael is asking, you know, it's tough sometimes when you actually put in a keyword and you see that that top of page bid is estimated to be, you know, $25+. You know, some keywords you might want to advertise on are even $50, $60, even $90 per click. $90 per click is going to be really rare to see. But either way, that is a reality in AdWords right now. There are certain markets that are extremely competitive. Now, what you need to keep in mind is your targeting settings. If you're, for instance, targeting the entire USA and you're a small law firm in Georgia, you should probably only target the area around you in Georgia. That's going to help reduce your cost per click because the competition in that space might be a little bit lower. So that average CPC is going to be lower. But if you are in an industry that is very competitive, you know, I'll rattle some off: insurance, lawyers, high technology, medical technology, SEO, web services. All of those are very, very competitive right now. It might just be a reality that your cost per click is going to be very high, but definitely take in mind your targeting settings to try and narrow it down a little bit so you're not paying a premium in areas that you're not interested in attracting traffic from. Let's see, a couple more questions coming through. So there's another one here from Rian, kind of going off the same topic here. When you see that a CPC is extremely high initially and it swallows up your budget, how can you control this? The first thing to look into is perhaps try and use more long-tail versions of that keyword. So instead of running kind of a general, maybe like two-term keyword, you probably would want to look at maybe some long-tail forms or maybe even phrase or exact match. Really keep in mind that the bidding does relate to the match type that you're using. So if you're on broad match, for example, you're probably going to be paying a lot more per click just because there's a lot more competition and you're matching up with a lot more searches. So in general, if you see that high CPC, look to see if there are other keyword ideas that you can bring in that might be a little bit cheaper, more long-tail keywords, and try and narrow your targeting so that you're only showing your ad on areas where you're willing to pay that much for a click. For those of you that are looking for just a recording of the webinar, we are going to upload this to the website, and we'll also send out an email that has a recording of the webinar in it. So definitely hold tight for that, and we'll have this uploaded. And you'll also be able to find it eventually in the WordStream software under that blog and videos tab. Great question here about stacked bidding from Jim. Jim is asking, isn't bidding on the same keyword with different match types essentially bidding against yourself and driving your cost up? The answer is yes if you set it up wrong. If you set up stacked bidding correctly, you're not going to compete against yourself. Because the reason why you set your bids differently in a tiered fashion in stacked bidding is because you need to give Google a reason to make sure that it picks the keyword that is best eligible for that search query. So what you're actually doing is you're setting up your bidding in a way that avoids competing against yourself. Because you don't want to have a modified broad keyword and a phrase match keyword with the same quality score and the same bid, because if somebody typed in that keyword in the phrase match format, Google could actually pick and choose between the two, and that is indeed where you would start competing against yourself. But by giving the phrase match keyword a higher bid, you're giving Google a reason to pick it over the modified broad keyword in the auction so that it sources the traffic to the proper keyword, and you're not paying a premium for that click if you don't have to. Let's look into a couple more questions here. There's a lot of questions, and a lot of them are kind of bouncing off of each other, so let me see if I can kind of pull them all together. One really good question here from Mark. So how would stacked bidding be used in a completely new account? I'll tell you right now that stacked bidding is probably the best way to set up new ad groups with new keywords that you've never run before. It's an extremely effective test because it gives you a good idea as to what type of traffic you're going to be able to pull in. Your modified broad keyword is going to be the one that casts the widest net, so you'll be looking for kind of those extra queries that you may have not considered as your keywords. Phrase match will find a few more of those, but it will do it in a lot more targeted manner, maybe for a little bit cheaper of a click. And then exact match is obviously going to tell you if people are using that keyword that you selected specifically as a search. So it's just a really good way for understanding what type of traffic comes in on that keyword that you've selected, and you can use those different match types to pull in search query data. Perhaps you're using the query stream report to see what queries have come through, and you can build out additional keyword groups using that data that you pulled in from that stacked bidding strategy. Another good question from Mark Sansom. It's about approaching remarketing campaigns and how you would approach bidding for remarketing. So the first thing you need to do is think about the goal of your remarketing campaign. Are you just trying to generate awareness, so you just want your ad showing up and delivering a message? Or are you looking to actually generate clicks, and perhaps you're also trying to get leads through that click? So if you're focused on generating clicks through remarketing, first of all, the thing you should know is that remarketing is all based off of the audience list that you select to actually remarket to. And you can bid up higher on the display network on certain websites that probably do better for you. So that's kind of how you start to think about actually bidding and remarketing. You'll probably want to start out with a manual CPC bid option and then look into the websites that get the most traffic and that give you the best performance. And then you'll just want to bid up a little bit higher for those sites that you can get more impressions on those sites. But start out with manual CPC, run your basic audience lists and see which sites give you the best performance. And then from there, you can adjust your bidding to try and get more impressions on those top performing web properties. So here's a good question from Tom Aldish. Asking about delivery options on the ads. So talking about like accelerated delivery versus standard delivery over the course of the day. If you're an advertiser where your conversions occur in the AM, as Thomas is suggesting here, it actually might be beneficial to run an accelerated delivery, especially if you have an ad schedule set up for that particular time frame. That would allow you to try and get the best clicks and the most clicks as possible during a time frame that you've identified as one that is good for conversions. So it's certainly an option to consider if you see the evidence there. Use that dimensions tab, go and look at the hour of the day of the week, and try and figure out, if you're falling out of position during that time, or again, if you're getting the best results there. And then you can make an adjustment on your ad schedule to try and deliver ads as frequently as possible during those peak hours. Real quick question here from Paul, just asking if ad scheduling is available for non-mobile campaigns. Absolutely, it's available across all campaigns. So you can set up an ad schedule for your mobile ads specifically and for your search desktop ads as well. A lot of questions are coming in related to kind of like the number of keywords within an ad group. So some people are pointing out that when you do stacked bidding, you're actually adding more keywords to the ad group. So how does that affect the performance of the ad group overall? What I want to emphasize is that the number of keywords in an ad group is not necessarily the most important thing to look at. Sure, you can use that as kind of a way to tell if, like, all right, maybe I'm approaching a certain threshold where I'm going to be a little bit cluttered in how many keywords I'm using in the group. But the keywords in your group need to be in there based on their semantic relation to each other. So actually how they're written in the terms that they're using. So when you're thinking about stacked bidding, you're actually using the same keyword 3 times. So there's no real impact that's being made in terms of the number of keywords in the ad group because you're still just bidding on the same keyword. So it's always good to keep them within the same ad group and just try and make sure that you are segmenting your ad groups more so based on the specific keyword that you are using and how it's written. So if you're doing like web SEO, you're probably going to want to create an ad group, for example, that's like WordPress SEO, and then you're going to want to do another that's like Drupal SEO. You don't want to ever combine those together because they're different keywords. But in your Drupal SEO ad group, you should absolutely be running that keyword 3 times on 3 different match types. And again, we will be emailing this out, so you will have a copy of the slides and just a full recording of the presentation, so definitely hold tight for that. Andrew has a good question here. So is there a way to break down and see both the hour of the day and day of the week before adjusting the schedule? So right now, AdWords doesn't let you see the actual performance hour by hour on each unique day of the week. Definitely would be something nice to have. You can kind of slowly get to it by doing some sort of spreadsheet analysis. You can kind of combine different reports and see if you can get close to kind of creating some averages for each of those days. But for right now, you can't do a side-by-side comparison, unfortunately. But definitely just reference that dimensions tab more often. It's something that typically goes overlooked by most AdWords advertisers, especially in the early stages. So definitely make sure you're looking into those trends. So that kind of hits on the majority of the questions that came through. I don't believe I passed over over any major ones here, but let me know if there's something that you'd like to make sure you have answered. Just have a few more minutes here, so we'll hang around for about 5 more, and we'll see if anything else comes through. But if not, thank you so much again for joining the webinar, and we'll definitely look forward to seeing you on future presentations. But certainly stick around if you have any more questions for me. So a real quick question from Leo, just kind of going back into the, how many keywords we should limit the ad groups to. I'll say this. So I'm not a big believer in the idea that it's the number of keywords within an ad group, but I do believe that you can use that as kind of a threshold for trying to identify if an ad group might have a problem with it. So usually like over 25 keywords in an ad group is certainly a, kind of a target threshold for you to look into. But again, it all comes down to the semantic difference between those keywords. So making sure that those keywords are similarly written and aren't talking about different things. That's going to give you the best opportunity at quality score. So John, your original question there. So your original question up at the top, I think I did overlook that one, so my apologies there. So you were asking, do you base your stacked bidding off of the highest possible estimated top of page bid of whatever match type has the highest estimated top of page bid? So let's kind of visualize it a little bit. So you're looking at your ad group and you see that you add 3 keywords on 3 different match types, and let's say your phrase match keyword is Google's giving you the warning that that has the highest estimated average cost per click bid. I would drop the bid by at least $2 from what it's recommended from Google. Google gives you that number because it wants you to spend enough to try and get into the top 3 positions. That's not necessarily the number that you need to actually get impressions on the actual keyword. So I would recommend making sure that you do maybe start your bid a couple dollar amounts lower than what that estimated average CPC needs to be to get into that top of page result. And then use that as your kind of lowest bid, and then only raise your bid on the more restrictive match types by a small percentage. So do like 5%. So you'll start your bid. Let's say the estimated top of page bid is $8. You should start your modified broad at 6, and then your phrase should be about 610, and your exact should be about 620. Good question here from David real quick, just asking if there's a place we can go to listen to past webinars on certain topics. Absolutely. If you log into WordStream, you'll see the blog and videos tab at the top of the software. And if you click on the webinars and videos section, that actually has every single webinar that we've done as a customer success team. So you'll always be able to find them there. And that's where we'll actually upload this one. So a couple more questions coming in. I'm just going to take about a couple more. Let me just kind of put these together real quick. So a good question from Raphael. He's asking, if AdWords will lower your quality score if you do a lot of ad group creation and keyword testing. So in general, the better segmented your account is, so the more ad groups you have, typically the better shot you'll have at getting a high quality score, because that means you're actually catering your ads very specifically to each ad group that you're creating. The other question is, if you're doing a lot of keyword testing, does that impact your quality score? As long as you're keeping your keyword settings the same, so meaning your targeting settings, that's your match type and the ads that are associated with that keyword, you're not going to get pinged on your quality score in any way. The only thing that you're going to see is maybe adjustments in your average position and click-through rate, simply because you're experimenting with your bids and you're getting into different positions because of that. But as long as you're not pausing, deleting, and recreating keywords, you shouldn't expect to see anything happen to your quality score. Just make sure that you keep kind of your targeting settings consistent as you do that testing with your keyword bids. And a really good question, just the last one that I'm going to wrap up with, is from Jason, asking about stacked bidding. So should you remove non-performing match types at some point? You mentioned about 30 days is kind of a good threshold for that. Absolutely. So you should be kind of considering stacked bidding as more of like a test. And when you do run that for about 30 days, you might find that, hey, all of your traffic is going to phrase and exact, and your modified broad keywords just kind of pulling in all the crap. That is something you can totally see happen. I've seen it happen in many accounts before. So after a 30-day testing period, I do recommend going back in and looking to see if you see clear trends that indicate a certain keyword version is just not going to work well for you. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up for here. Lots of great questions, though. So definitely make sure you stay in touch with your customer success reps. All of you have a dedicated rep, so keep them in the loop. If you do have any questions on the topics here, just lob them over to the customer success rep. They'll be able to help you out. They're just as knowledgeable as all of us here today on the webinar, so all of us will be able to help you with whatever you need. But in the meantime, hopefully we'll see you on future presentations. And thank you again for joining us today.